My name is Ryan, and I'm 29 years old. I've been dating Vanessa, 27, for 3 years. We've lived together for almost a year now, and up until yesterday morning, I genuinely thought I was in a great relationship. Vanessa often talked about weddings, sent me Instagram pictures of engagement rings, and even hinted at which restaurant might be perfect for our next special date. I was planning to propose to her next month. Yesterday morning, I went to Local Beans, our regular coffee spot. I sat in a quiet corner with my laptop, wearing my earbuds, pretending to work. But in truth, I wasn't listening to anything. I just needed a peaceful moment to focus. And then I heard a familiar laugh. It was Vanessa. She was sitting right behind me with her two friends, Brittany and Emily. I was about to stand up and say hi until I heard my name come out of her mouth, laced with a tone I'd never heard before, a mocking tone. I froze. There was a wooden divider between our tables, tall enough that they didn't notice me. And then I heard everything. "You're really going to go through with it?" Brittany asked. "Of course," Vanessa replied coldly. "Ryan's dumb enough to think he's the one making the plans. But I'm the one running this game." She said she'd checked my browser history and knew I'd been browsing rings at Somerset Jewelers. "He's definitely going to propose," she added. "And when he gets down on one knee in front of all his friends, I'll laugh in his face and say no." Jason already booked our trip to Cabo, 2 days after that pathetic proposal. Jason, the coworker she swore was just a friend, the one who'd been showing up in her Instagram stories lately. She went on to say she hadn't paid rent in months because the lease was in my name, that she had been stealing money from our joint account. She even mocked my Timex watch, saying, "It's 2012 and he still wears that cheap thing." I sat there numb, but I didn't freak out. I didn't explode. Instead, I pulled out my phone, hit record, and let it capture every word, every laugh, every betrayal. When they left, I just stared out the window. Vanessa jumped into her car, grinning like she hadn't just demolished the man who loved her. I drove home. My mind was steel cold. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I calculated. The apartment was under my name. The bank account could be audited. I had audio proof. And most importantly, time. Vanessa had no idea that the play she thought she was directing was about to be rewritten. By me. That evening when Vanessa came home, I smiled as if nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, wrapped her arms around me from behind, and asked how my day had been. I asked about hers. She lied without flinching, said she had lunch with the girls. Then, as if reading from a rehearsed script, she whispered, "How about Belle Rosa next week? I have a feeling that night will be special." "Great idea, babe," I replied, still smiling. She truly believed she was pulling the strings, but what she didn't know was that the pawn she thought she was sacrificing was the one who now controlled the board. The next morning, I woke up early. Vanessa was still asleep, wrapped tightly in our comforter, looking innocent, almost childlike. As if she hadn't spent months planning to betray the man sleeping beside her, I made coffee in silence, staring out onto our balcony. That small space had once been our morning ritual. We'd sit out there, talk about the future, laugh about little things, hold hands. Now it felt like a graveyard for every lie she ever told. Then I made my first move. I created a fake Instagram account and followed Brittany and Emily, her two loyal sidekicks. Just as I expected, they were social media addicts. Within 48 hours, I had collected dozens of Instagram stories and posts featuring Vanessa and Jason, laughing at bars, hugging at restaurants, and one photo, crystal clear, of them kissing. She was still wearing the promise ring I had given her the previous year. I kept playing my role as the perfect boyfriend. I asked about her day. I cooked dinner. I held her when she said work was stressful. She believed she had me exactly where she wanted. But I knew every time her phone buzzed and her eyes lit up, it wasn't because of me. It was Jason. Thursday night, she told me she had to stay late at work. I didn't argue. Instead, I went to a small Thai restaurant near her office. I sat at the bar, sipping a beer, watching the entrance. And sure enough, she walked in, hand in hand with Jason. They sat in the back corner, legs tangled beneath the table. She fed him bites of food, giggled like a teenager, and leaned into him like I never existed. I didn't storm over. I didn't cause a scene. I simply pulled out my phone and recorded the entire dinner. The next day, I ran into Brittany at the grocery store. She froze when she saw me. Fun little cafe trip the other day? I asked casually. She stammered, uh, yeah, it was fine. Vanessa working late again? I asked, looking directly into her eyes. She paled, mumbled an excuse, walked away quickly. 5 minutes later, Vanessa called me, voice sweet as syrup. I miss you. Let's go out tonight? I smiled into the phone. I was actually thinking Bel Rosa. I already booked a table. Get ready, babe. That afternoon, I began quietly packing my things. Nothing obvious, just a few books, some documents, a couple keepsakes. I had already signed a lease for a new apartment on the other side of town. My best friend Daniel helped arrange the moving logistics. He was the first person I confided in. After hearing everything, he said just one thing. We don't get even with words. We get even with reality. That night, Vanessa sent me a photo of a diamond ring from Somerset Jewelers. I still love princess cut the most, she wrote. I replied with a red heart emoji. Meanwhile, Daniel texted me a photo of the box I had prepared for the proposal night. It held no ring. Instead, it contained printed screenshots, photos, chat logs, and a handwritten note that read, Vanessa, thank you for teaching me that sometimes things that sparkle are just trash that reflects light. She had no clue. She was picking out dresses, designing invitations, and texting her friends to get ready for the celebration. Even Jason, the so-called mystery boyfriend, had been invited to the bar next door to accidentally run into us after the proposal. Vanessa thought she was about to star in a fairy tale. She had no idea it was going to be a plot twist straight out of a psychological thriller. Saturday arrived with skies so clear it felt cinematic. I put on my navy blue suit, the one Vanessa once said made me look like a CEO from a Netflix series. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I smiled. Not because I felt powerful, but because I was finally at peace with what I had to do. At 7 p.m. sharp, I picked Vanessa up. She stepped out of our apartment glowing. A bright red dress, soft waves in her hair, the exact lipstick shade I once told her looked stunning. She looked like someone ready for a fairy tale. You look amazing, she said, beaming. Are you ready for a night to remember? I asked. More than ready. We arrived at Bel Rosa by 7:25. The place was packed, just as I had expected. Our table was tucked in a romantic corner, dim candlelight flickering, wine already waiting. At the far end of the bar, Daniel sat, looking like any regular customer. I spotted Brittany and Emily at another table, phones half hidden under napkins, ready to capture the magical moment. 3 tables over sat Jason, her just a friend, pretending to scroll on his phone but clearly watching us with careful anticipation. Vanessa held my hand throughout the meal. She was affectionate, cheerful, hopeful. She asked about our future plans, suggested a honeymoon in Greece, and giggled every time I filled her glass with more wine. She had no idea this was the final scene of a play where she thought she was the star. When dessert came, I noticed her shifting. She kept glancing around. Her hand gently brushed her dress, probably prepping for the fake gasp or tears she imagined giving when I knelt down to propose. I stood. Vanessa straightened in her seat, eyes wide, a flicker of excitement. Brittany raised her phone. Emily leaned forward, biting her lip. I didn't kneel. I didn't pull out a ring box. Instead, I lifted my wine glass and spoke clearly. I'd like to make a toast to 3 unforgettable years with a woman who shared my bed, my meals, and for the past 8 months, shared her body with Jason, who's sitting 3 tables behind us. The air snapped silent. Cutlery froze midair. Glasses hovered untouched. Brittany's phone slipped slightly. Emily stopped breathing. Vanessa's face drained of color. I continued. Vanessa, thank you for teaching me what growing up really means. Thank you for showing me that love doesn't always die because of a third person. Sometimes it dies slowly over years of quiet betrayal from someone sleeping beside you. I pulled out my phone and hit play. Her voice echoed through the restaurant. Cold, cruel, calculated. I'll let him propose in front of everyone. Then I'll laugh in his face and walk out. Jason already booked Cabo. A spoon clattered to the floor. Jason looked like a deer in headlights. Brittany clutched Emily's hand. Jason stood up, his face pale, and walked out without a word. Vanessa's lips quivered. You You set all this up? No, I said calmly. You did. I just turned the lights on. I pulled out the box from under the table and set it down. She opened it with trembling hands. No ring, just pages of photos, screenshots, chat logs, the full recording. And one handwritten note. Next time you see this ring, remember, there was someone who was ready to give you his whole future. You chose Jason. Vanessa jumped to her feet, knocking over her wine glass. She screamed, "You're a psycho. You want to ruin me?" "No," I replied. "You ruined yourself. I'm just choosing not to go down with you." The restaurant manager gently approached. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Brittany couldn't look up. Emily wasn't smiling anymore. Jason was long gone. I paid the bill, shook Daniel's hand, and walked out the front door. The evening breeze was cool against my face. I took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt free. I didn't drive straight back to the apartment. I went to my new place, a space that didn't hold her photos, her lies, or her carefully staged throw pillows for Instagram aesthetic. I sat down, opened my laptop, checked my backup folders. The audio, the photos, the texts, all archived. 3 copies: cloud, hard drive, USB, just in case. Half an hour later, my phone lit up. 14 missed calls from Vanessa, Brittany, unknown numbers, probably Jason or someone else in their twisted circle. A message from Vanessa came in. "How could you humiliate me like that in front of everyone? What happened with Jason isn't what you think. I was just looking for what I deserved." Then another, "Please, Ryan, we had good times. Don't erase everything." And the third, "If you don't delete that recording, I'll sue you for invasion of privacy." I didn't respond, not because I was afraid, but because there was nothing left to say. And besides, the recording was never published. It only played in one place, at one time, when it needed to. The next morning, I got a message from Daniel. "Bro, she caused a meltdown at work." Attached was a secretly recorded video from a colleague of his. It showed Vanessa standing in the middle of her office, yelling like a storm about how I had ruined her life. Her face was red, her voice shaking with fury. When her manager calmly asked what was going on, she screamed, "He humiliated me. He made everyone see that I was just a joke. Jason betrayed me too." The room fell silent. Jason, her boss. That's when it all began to unravel. Within 1 week, it was like watching dominoes fall. Jason was fired. The company had strict policies against relationships between supervisors and subordinates, especially when there were accusations of manipulation and conflicts of interest. Vanessa had just made everything public, and Jason, now caught between infidelity and corporate violations, was swiftly shown the door. Vanessa was suspended, not for the affair, but for disruptive behavior at the office. HR doesn't tolerate chaos, especially when it involves yelling in front of clients and staff. Then came the final blow. Jason's legal wife, yes, his actual wife, received a full package of evidence from an anonymous sender. Screenshots, photos, the audio recording, everything. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. The truth doesn't require a name. Brittany disappeared from social media. Emily sent me a private message. She said she didn't know it would go this far, that she never supported Vanessa's plan, but just didn't know how to stop it. I didn't reply. I don't hate Emily, but silence when your friend is doing something cruel isn't neutrality. It's complicity. Then came the final act. Vanessa showed up at my new workplace, uninvited, unannounced. She stood outside the lobby in athleisure clothes, no makeup, hair a mess, nothing like the polished woman who once believed she was untouchable. When I stepped outside with Daniel, she ran up to us. "You owe me. You stole 3 years of my life. You think you've won? You'll never find someone better than me." Daniel just chuckled. "That's why he dumped you in public?" She lunged, trying to snatch the phone from my hand, but security stepped in. "Miss Vanessa," one of the guards said calmly, "if you don't leave the premises, we'll have to call the police." I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, 3 seconds, no anger, no pity, and walked away. That night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Vanessa's mother. She was crying. "Ryan, I know you don't want anything to do with her anymore, but I want to say I'm sorry. I raised a daughter who doesn't know how to love anyone but herself." "Oh," I replied softly, "I don't blame you. I just regret It took me 3 years to learn that love alone isn't enough, especially when the other person only knows how to play the victim. The call ended, and for the first time in months, I felt light. 2 months passed since Belrosa. What followed felt like watching a slow implosion from a safe distance. Vanessa was unemployed. She became the subject of whispers in the social circles she used to boast about. The new elite, she once called them. Now she was excluded, ignored, slowly erased. Jason? Rumor had it he was renting a small apartment with a Craigslist roommate. Divorced, unemployed, ghosted by everyone who once smiled at him at the office happy hours. And me? I live simply. Early mornings, gym, reading, rebuilding my marketing business with the energy that used to be drained by Vanessa's emotional manipulations. I didn't try to forget her. I just stopped making space for her in my mind. And when your mind is no longer weighed down, your heart begins to heal too. The money I once saved for an engagement ring, I used it for something else, a solo trip to the West Coast. I sat on the beach one evening, watching the sun stain the sky with orange and gold, and realized I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Not a "you deserve better," not a "sorry I hurt you," just me. And that was enough. A week after my trip, I met Sophia. Not by accident, she was a friend of Daniel's. But there was nothing staged or forced about it. She was calm, intelligent, seasoned by life in a way that made her feel grounded, not jaded. Most importantly, she didn't need me to feel complete. We sat across from each other at a quiet coffee shop, talked like we'd known each other in another life. She didn't ask about Vanessa, not once. Instead, she asked about the book I was reading, about why I loved photography, about what made me choose marketing in the first place. There were no expectations, no performance, no manipulation dressed as affection, just respect. We met a few times after that, always on our own terms. No pressure, just two people slowly relearning how to be open again. And then one night, Sophia sent me a link. It was a Facebook post in a local community group. A video had surfaced, Vanessa screaming outside my office, security guards holding her back, the comment section filled with popcorn emojis and people tagging their friends. The top comment read, "This is your red flag PSA. Good men don't turn women into this. She came that way." I scrolled through it all. No pain, no rage, just a breath, a release. Sophia texted me right after. "Thought you'd want to see this," I replied. "Thanks for sending. But I don't live in someone else's past anymore." She responded, "Good, because you belong in the present." I smiled. This story doesn't end with an engagement ring, a dozen roses, or a dramatic reunion at the airport. It ends with growth. It ends with a man once labeled too trusting, easy to manipulate, now knowing how to say no. It ends with a question I'll carry forever. If someone makes you trade your peace just to keep their love, are you sure it's love at all? Not every wound needs revenge. Sometimes the best revenge is simply choosing to rise, to grow, to live a life so full, so intentional, so anchored in self-respect, that the person who once tried to break you no longer even fits in the frame. I didn't win by destroying Vanessa. I won by not destroying myself trying to hold on to her. And when I returned, it wasn't to beg for forgiveness. It was to forgive myself for staying too long. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear this reminder. You're not weak for walking away from toxic love. You're brave for choosing yourself. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories where truth, pain, and healing walk side by side. Thanks for listening. See you in the next story.